Hello, artists! Today we are going to be reading a book called Lines That Wiggle, and then we are going to make our own little collage monster and then make our own lines that wiggle. Lines that wiggle, lines that bend. Wavy lines from end to end. Lines that tickle, lines that sprout. Bugs have lines that stick right out. Lines to trap. Lines to hide. Two lines running side by side. Lines that curve, lines that curl. Underwater lines that swirl. Lines that crisscross, lines that mend. Lines that with doggies at the ends. Lines that scurry, lines in threes. Lines in leaves that grow on trees, lines that twist, lines that sway. Lines that swish the flies away. Zigzag lines light up the sky. Rainbow lines are way up high. Lines are everywhere you look. Find some lines not in this book. All right, so in this book, we saw lots and lots of different kinds of lines. So now that we have seen all these different kinds of lines in our book, we are going to create our own project that has lots of lines. So we are going to make our own monster that is eating out of a bowl. Maybe he's eating some spaghetti, but you can decide what his line spaghetti looks like. So you can use these kind of loopy lines like they did, but then you can use different kinds of lines that we have seen in this book too. Maybe they're eating some lines that scurry. Maybe they're the kind of monsters that would eat bugs. So maybe they have some lines that scurry coming out of their bowl onto their fork. So you can make that decision when we make our own monster. So let's get started. So I have just a white piece of paper, and then if you have other pieces of paper and can do some collage, remember you can use things like tissue paper, you can use wrapping paper. If you don't have just construction paper and that sort of thing, you can also color on a different white piece of paper to make it more colorful. Or if you don't want to do collage, you can just draw a monster out in the same shapes that I'm using with my collage for my monster. So I picked out this green color. This is my very favorite color. This is what I'm going to make my monster out of. So I'm going to draw him out on here, and then I'll end up gluing him right on here. So I'm going to take a pencil, and my monster doesn't have to look like this one, or yours can look like that if you want, but I'm going to make mine a little bit different. So our monster is also kind of made of lines, right? Because even this is a line that goes up and back down, and these are lines. So maybe I want to start using lines that wiggle when I create my monster. So I'm going to start at the bottom, and I think I'm going to do one that has maybe some bumpy hair. So I'm doing kind of just some bumpy lines that go up and back down, up and down, and I'm curving around the top and coming back down. It almost looks kind of like a cloud. So making kind of like a cloud monster shape. You can make your monster look however you want. Maybe you want it to be loopy. Maybe you want it to have zigzag lines. And then you can decide if it has ears or horns. I might add some little horns, just some little triangles. And then maybe I want it to have some ears too. So I'm going to add an ear shape and then just put a little line for the inside of his ear. And I'll do one over here too. Mine almost looks kind of like a sheep. So now I am going to go ahead and do the eyes and the mouth of my monster. So I'm going to take my white paper and I'm going to draw out some eyes. So I'll decide how I want my eyes to look. You could do eyes that are circles, and then maybe do pupils in the middle. You can fill them in. You could do eyes that are like football shapes, more like how our eyes are shaped, like football shapes. Or maybe you want to do some really crazy eyes that are different shapes and different sizes. Looks a little crazy. Maybe like cat eyes. And then I'll just fill those in. And you know what else I can do is I can go ahead and decide if I want some teeth. Maybe I'll just make some zigzag lines on the bottom of my paper, some little triangles. And then I can cut those out and I can add them into my mouth to make teeth later. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out the two eyes I want to use. And I'm going to cut out my little triangles for the teeth. And I'm also going to draw out what I want my monster's mouth to look like. So you can see this monster's mouth is big and pink. This one is actually closed. They just drew it on. So I'm going to make one that's big and pink, but maybe in a different shape. So I'm going to make mine just a little bit of a weird shape. Just decided I want it to be kind of a weird shape. So I'm going to cut that out. And maybe I want to add a tongue too. So I'm going to use this little piece of paper and I'll kind of fit it where I think I want my tongue to be. And I made kind of just a little tongue shape, and I'm going to make it hanging out of my mouth too. So you can kind of see that there. You can make your monster's face look however you want. You don't have to have a tongue. You don't have to have the pink mouth. You can just draw its mouth on. You can make his eyes look however you want. Okay, so now I've got my little tongue. It's kind of like a heart shape. And then I would just glue it in there. So let's assemble with all my pieces. Glue those pieces on top of my monster's head. So I'll grab my glue stick. And I'm just going to glue on the different pieces. So I'll glue my eye on where I want it. Glue his other eye on. So there's his eyes. Now I'm going to glue his mouth, just the pink part first. Got that in there. And then I'm going to decide where I want the tongue and the teeth to sit. Okay, so I glued down my eyes, my mouth, my tongue, and my teeth. And now I'm going to cut all around the outside of my monster, outside of his ears, and outside of his horn. So I've cut out my monster. Now I'm going to glue him down right where I want him. And I actually glued my monster a little bit higher than the bottom because I'm going to put the table down here. So for my table, I'm going to use some crayons. You could use color pencils or crayons. I'm actually going to use colored pencils. That's what I have. And I'm going to draw the line for my table, which is going to be just this line that goes right underneath of my monster and goes all the way out to the sides of the paper and out to the other side of my paper. So there's my table that's sitting in front of him. I'm going to fill that in with my color. So there's my table. And now I'm going to make the bowl that he's eating out of. I'm actually going to use this white paper. Again, I'm going to use the back of it. So the bowl is going to be a straight line for the top of it. And then just a curved line like it looks like a smile. And I'm going to color this in however I want. Maybe I'll add some patterns to it. We've talked about patterns before. Those are things that repeat. So I'm going to pick out some colors and then I'm going to make some things that repeat. So maybe I'll use some blue triangles and color them in. I'm just going to repeat the blue triangles all over the place. Could do hearts. You could just do stripes of color, swirly lines, all kinds of different things. Could be a pattern. Got my bowl all filled in. I'm going to cut it out now. And then I'm going to glue it down right where I want it to sit on the table in front of him. If you want, you can add your monster's arms. So I think I'm going to grab some green that kind of matches. And I'm just going to make him some arms. I got one over here. It's kind of like a wiggly line. And then I'm going to repeat that wiggly line over here. Wiggle. And then I'll just make some little sausage fingers. Maybe he just has 3 fingers. I can color that in. Maybe this one. I'll curve, almost like a macaroni. And then I'll make his little sausage fingers on top of his body. So if you can't really see him, then you can take something black. So I'm going to use a black marker. And I'm going to draw them over them. And I'll just draw all around his arms. Okay, so I just outlined a few things around my monster, and I also outlined down around my table. So now we're ready to add our lines. So I'm going to use some different pieces of paper for my lines. So I have some different paper, different color options. I also am going to use just some colored pencils. So you could just use crayons for this if you have some ribbon or yarn. So I have a couple different, I have black and orange ribbons. I'm going to use some of those for my lines as well. Use the purple. And I'm going to make some different kinds of lines. So I'm going to make, maybe some of those lines that the ants were making, the dashed lines. So I'm just making some of those that lead from his mouth to the bowl. And I'll make one over here too. And now maybe I want a loopy line. So one that loops all the way down into the bowl. And maybe I'll make a zigzag line too. Maybe just some little squiggly lines that just are hanging out of his mouth. The zigzag line that's on his tongue goes all the way down. A wavy line. So now I'm going to use some of my other papers and my ribbons to make some lines too. And those can be lines that even stand out from the paper. So I'll show you what I mean. I'm just going to cut out a strip that's even thinner than this one. So I've got a really thin little piece of paper, and I'm going to fold it up and then fold it over, kind of like an accordion. I'm just going to keep going. What kind of line does this look like? A zigzag line. So I've got a zigzag line, and then maybe with this part I could make a wavy line. So I'm just gonna kind of curve it a little bit, and I've got a wavy line. I can put a little bit of glue maybe just on one end of it, so just right there, just on this end piece, and then I can attach it on top of my monster's mouth. And then he's got a zigzag line hanging out of his mouth that pops up off the paper. And I'll do the same thing with my wavy line, except this one I'm going to do coming out of the bowl. So I'll just stick it right here, coming up out of the bowl. And again, this is just if you have them, if you have other pieces of paper that you can use. This one, even wrap it around a pencil. So if I start it, then I can curl it around a pencil and make like a curly line. So it kind of swirls around. Maybe I'll just take one end of the swirl and just put some glue right on the end, and then find a place to stick it. A little swirly line. Maybe now I'll use some ribbons. So that one is just a straight line that just goes straight from the bowl to his mouth. So I think I'm happy with the amount of lines that I have. And one other thing we can add that I forgot is that we can even add a spoon or a fork in one of his hands to show how he's eating. So I'll show you how to make a fork. So you can just make a fork in his hand by going below his hand and just making like a line, like a little loop. I'm going to color it in. So just like a little stick. And then we're going to make another little stick on the top that looks like it would go straight across. And now I'm going to make it look like the letter T, like he's holding the letter T. And then at each end of the top of the letter T, I'm going to make little prongs for my fork, and then I'm going to make two more in between. And you can even add more in the background if you want to, or you can just leave it just like this. You could have also added a pattern into your table too if you wanted. You could color it in any color you want. Your monster could be any color you want. You could have done all of this without collage and just done it all in crayon or marker, whatever you have, and just drawn out your monster in whatever shape you wanted, given them whatever eyes and mouth you wanted them to have. And that's totally up to you. And then used whatever kinds of lines you wanted to use, like the ones we saw in the book. So I hope you had tons of fun with this project. Please take a picture if you are able to, and send your project to me. Bye.